The first couple of moves of this chess game are pretty good for both black and white. But here on the third move, white wants to move the A pawn, but you see there is a red arrow. It is best for chess players to develop their E and D pawn in the opening and try to get the knights and the bishops out into the game. If we press the suggestions, you can see that moving the knight to F3 or moving the bishop to C4 are two of the better moves. You can also see moves from the pawns, from the F pawn and G pawn, but I prefer not to do that. I would prefer to have the chess players just move the bishops and the knights instead. From this position, the pawn moves up 2, bishop moves over, and then you can see we have another red arrow. White chooses to move a pawn up 1. And again, I recommend not moving these pawns off to the side, but just the two central pawns, and then developing the knights and the bishops. The next idea is to not move the same piece in the opening too many times. Pay attention to the black bishop that has the red arrow pointing to the C5 square, and watch how many times black moves the bishop. Instead, black should have gotten the other knight out into the game, developed the D pawn, castled the king, and gotten the other bishop off the back. So here's the sequence of moves. So you can see black moved the bishop a lot rather than developing pieces. Here's another series of moves in the game. Notice black moves that bishop yet again. And that leads us to this position right here. White flees from the attack. And if you remember the ABCs of chess: attack, block, capture, defend, exchange, flee. White chooses to flee, but white has an incredible attack right here. Pause the video and see if you can find it. If you notice, white has what we call the fried liver in chess, the opportunity to fork black's queen and rook by moving the knight to the square here on F7. And by moving to F7, both the queen and the rook are being attacked, and the knight is being protected by the bishop. And so one of those two big pieces is going to fall. Instead in the game, white moved to F3. The next set of moves deal with developing pieces. And as you can see, there's a red arrow by the black pawn. If we press the suggestions, you can see that it would be better to develop the knight. You can see the bishop could also capture the knight as well, but either one of those moves would be good. Moving the white pawn down doesn't really do a whole lot. Here, white takes away the defense of a pawn, and you can see this knight is defending this pawn right here, and you have to be careful that your pieces are being defended. And what white does is white moves here but leaves that piece undefended, and it is a red arrow, but for advanced, well, I'll show you why in a second. Well, now it's a blue arrow, but white goes ahead and, or black goes ahead and takes that pawn for free. In this position, white has a red arrow on the H pawn, and the reason why that is not the greatest move is that white still has some development. The king can still be castled, and the queen can be moved, and the interesting move is the queen. Look at this suggested move. What do you notice about the queen if you move the queen to E2? It has an X-ray attack on the knight. And so the knight is pinned to the queen, or to the king, and the only way that white can get out of that is to really mess up its position and get its pieces all tied up. Here's another position I'd like to show you after a few moves here. Black gets the red arrow against the knight, and let me show you the suggested move. The suggested move is for the queen to take the knight. Now, it's true that black gets a knight for free, but the problem is that when black captures that piece, the pawns will be stacked, which means there will be two pawns in the same file. If black were to take with the queen, those three pawns could stay lined up side by side. After the pawn takes the knight, you can see how the pawns are stacked up on the G file. You're going to see a series of pretty good moves here. White attacks the bishop, and instead of her running out of the way, black attacks the knight, causing the pawns to be stacked now for white on the A file. Knight gets taken, bishop gets taken, queen gets taken, and you can see a series of blue arrow moves. So great job from both sides. Now, the reason why this isn't a very good move for white is that white doesn't necessarily protect the king. What white does is it pins its own bishop. And the best move in this position would actually be to put the queen in front of the king. Yes, there could be a queen trade there, but that is actually better than pinning your own piece. The next move for black, you can see, has a red arrow, and this should probably get about 3 red arrows. And here's the reason why. First of all, the bishop is pinned to the king, and it has no defenders. So black could take that bishop for free and get 3 points. Second of all, if the bishop moves to the square in front of the queen, that blocks the pin and the attack on the bishop, so now the bishop isn't being threatened, and it also takes the defender away from the B7 pawn, and so it gives white an opportunity to get a free piece, and that's what ended up happening. Black moves there, blocks the pin, blocks the opportunity for black to get a free piece, and loses a pawn. I didn't take enough time to look at the move before. Taking that pawn actually is not a very good move for white, and I'm going to show you why. In this position, it's checkmate in 3 for black. I want you to pause this video and see if you can figure out how to checkmate black, or how black can checkmate white in 3 moves. It's true that black has a double attack against white here. And what black does is black moves the bishop to G4, attacking the queen, but the king is in check. And so the queen is going to be taken, and black is going to get a scalp. And a scalp is nice, but a checkmate is even better. Do you see how black could checkmate? Well, the first move that black should have done, instead of moving to G4, was to move to C4 instead. Now the king is in check, and there's only 2 different things that white can do. The best move, well, white could move the queen in front of the king, but that would be an instant checkmate, because the black queen would recapture the white queen, and the queen in front of the king with a piece backing up as an automatic checkmate. White could stop it a little longer by putting the bishop there, but as soon as the black queen takes that bishop, then the white queen would have to protect the king by getting in front of it, and then the queen would jump in front for a checkmate. I will go through the rest of the game quickly, and I'll put on the suggestion button so you can see what the best moves would be, and it'll give you an idea of how to find great moves in chess. And if you want to pause any of these positions to get a better look at them, by all means do that. So here you see there's an attack on the king, and also an attack on the queen as well. So white really did the only thing that it could without being a checkmate the next move, and black ends up getting a scalp. Now you can see that white has a bishop now in exchange, or white could take the rook that's on a8, but instead white moves the pawn up. And when you play a game of chess, sometimes you just get really worked up about what you're doing. You kind of forget about the other things that are going on the board. But make sure you take the time to really scan the entire board and look for all of the possible moves. Because here you can see black could have taken the white bishop for free, but instead white moves the rook down. Let's see. They move there. Can see there's a free knight right there. Again, that black bishop is free for the taking, but white doesn't do it. Black, look at that. Black is really close to a checkmate here, but just moves down one instead. Again, white could take the black rook. And I ended the game right here because the notation that was taken, there was a bunch of moves by black written down and no more for white. So I really don't know how this game ended. But I hope that you can learn some things, and hopefully when you play your games, you'll see some of these positions and you'll be able to take advantage of them.